Everyone expected Alonso to bring the back three with him to Chelsea. He perfected it at Leverkusen, and the new signings incoming looked to suit a back three. But in the first two pre-season games against Western Sydney Wanderers and Spurs, he's gone for a back four. But against Spurs, there's something in particular that suggests what he's going to utilise this coming season. So which is it, a back three or a back four? The answer is it's both. And there's one mechanism that turns one into the other. By the end of this video, you'll see the whole plan that I think Xabi Alonso will be using at Chelsea in his first season. What he's named on the pitch, in possession, out possession, the asymmetry that nobody is noticing, and where there's actually some weak spots and where it already breaks. Game 1 was against Western Sydney Wanderers. It was a very, very young starting 11 with the likes of Reggie Watson, Mady Nicol-Jazuli, Reggie Walsh all starting. On paper it was a back four, a 4-2-3-1 is what the football apps say. But in the first half, the fullbacks did completely opposite jobs. It was the first sign of asymmetry under Alonso's system. In the very first game with academy kids, obviously he had been training them at Cobham over pre-season leading up to this game, and Landon Emanalo was at left back, but he was the aggressive one. He underlapped inside the left winger, who on the day was Dastan Satpayev. Rarely went outside, but he did show a few signs of getting to the byline and cutting back. But he very often stepped into the midfield pockets, into the half spaces, almost as a left-sided midfielder. But the right back did the complete opposite. It was Teo Subaloi, who is traditionally a centre-back in the academy scene. But he was at right back, and it was almost like an Arsenal-style disciplined fullback, just a centre-back playing there whose sole job is to defend and help the first phase building out from the back. He didn't tuck into a back three in possession, but he didn't bomb forwards. He didn't even invert into the midfield as an inverted fullback. It was quite conservative, but really obvious that he was being told to just be a solid, complete right back. Now, game 2 against Tottenham was a much better test, playing against an actual Premier League side, barely. And although it started as a 4-2-3-1 again against Spurs, in possession it quietly became a back three. It was clear the build-up was a three. Gerald Hatto as a left centre-back, Wesley Fofana as the right centre-back, and Levi Colwill in their centre as the central ball progressor. And in front of them was a clear dot pivot. Asugo and Lavia were sitting really close, really tight, both dropping together to receive the ball, which became a really obvious three with a two in front. If I remember the question from the start, is that back four or back three? It's a four on paper, on the football apps, out of possession and the starting shape from kickoff. But building as a three is what Xabi Alonso looks like he will be utilising this season. The one thing that we didn't compromise on in both games was, one, building short in every opportunity. We did go long a few times, but the emphasis was building short and creating the gaps and creating the overloads. Finding the free man who was often Cole Palmer, which we'll get to later on. And even against Western Sydney Wanderers, they were pressing like mad. They were pressing very high, which was quite difficult to play out the back against. The poor pitch made it a lot worse. I think we played on the same pitch against Sydney and Spurs. The pitch itself was grim, so many bubbles, not quite Stamford Bridge quality. So the on-ball responsibility fell on people who don't usually carry it. The centre-backs and even the keeper, Teddy Sharman-Lowe, had to break the lines, which isn't going to be the sole progressor, obviously, next season. Because the pivots struggled to turn on the ball with the poor passing and poor pitch. But when it worked, it really worked. Getting around a high press is the most rewarding, and it's generally beautiful. That's how Satpayev's goal came. Alonso even tweaked it live, which I liked, and it may have been because it was a experimental pre-season game with a lot of changes, but he dropped a second pivot in, despite starting with just a single pivot of Reggie Watson, which forced Sydney to choose whether to back the press and leave a man, or sit off and let Chelsea receive it. And quite often Reggie Walsh was popping up in random positions on the pitch, receiving the ball and turning out. But to be honest, it wasn't all clean. We won 6-4, conceding 4 goals against the worst team in Australia last season. We did play ourselves into danger quite often, and it only really settled once the senior players came on the pitch. There was better passing centre-backs. Colwill was one of the best in the world, we know that. Palmer is far better on the half-turn. But let's deal with the headline that everyone's speaking about after that Western Sydney Wanderers game, the João Pedro 9-minute hat-trick. Now I'm going to be a bit of a killjoy about it, because I think it was more just lethal finishing against a poor defence rather than proof that Xabi Alonso's system works. There were some nice moves, but there was way too big gaps. There was some poor defending, like I think his first goal was just a poor clearance from the Sydney defender. Then the third goal was just a set piece. But talking about João Pedro and Palmer, especially against Spurs, Palmer was the free man, popping up absolutely everywhere on the pitch to receive. He was literally dropping into every part of the pitch. Xabi Alonso has obviously told him, just go where there's space. Just like Messi did at the World Cup for Argentina. He just had a completely free role to use his football IQ and make things happen. João Pedro was also dropping off a little bit. We saw that last season too. He likes to drop off and get other players involved around him. He dropped into the centre circle a couple of times to receive the ball from the centre backs. And that's not just showing off or getting bored, it does a job. It opens up space and other players can utilise that. Dario Sugo was the one that was running into that space against Spurs. And the Esteval goal we scored against Spurs was basically the whole system in one move. It comes from the keeper into Lavia, who is in the double pillar. And although he does get lucky with getting tackled but keeping the ball, he is able to turn and find Palmer, who is the free man. Palmer goes wide to Gittins, who drives at the goal. Then his choice is to either shoot, maybe play a pass into a underlapping midfield run, but he chooses to cross it to the back post where Esteval is, who headers it very nicely into the back of the net. And I think that is where the shape wants to go. That's what Alonso wants to do. Get into the midfield pivot from the back, build centrally, and then go wide. Under Enzo Maresca, it was quite often going wide early, which just ended up with us having Pedro Neto or Alejandro Garnacho last season, having the ball really deep with two players in front of him, and they're basically expected to go and beat two players. It wasn't working. Right, but this is the part I'm most confident about, and I've not actually seen anyone else speak about it just yet. The two flanks, the left side and the right side, are designed to do absolute opposite jobs under Xabi Alonso in pre-season so far. This seems to be the engine of everything and shows us what I think the shape will be going forward. One side is genuinely a wide winger who hugs the touchline, and then the fullback on his side tucks inside, offers support, offers a passing option if going forward isn't the case. We saw it with Jamie Gittins starting as the left winger, who was hugging the touchline, and then Jarell Hatto was in the back three and build up, but if it did go that side, he would step up a little bit. But then the other side is a completely different image. It's a winger that cuts infield into the half space. We saw Esteval starting. He was the right winger on paper in a 4-2-3-1. And we'll get into the out of possession shape in a minute. But then Marco Palestra was the fullback that was bombing on, overlapping round Esteval, and he was hugging the touchline. So if you look at it, the two wide players are actually Gittins and Palestra. And I actually called this in the Western Sydney Wanderers game. I was making some notes and I saw the options that we have. It makes real sense. Gittins and Hatto is one combination. Then the other side, you'd have Esteval and Palestra. But if you were to take all of those players out and bring in our other options, on the left, you'd use new signer Morgan Rogers, and the player we're trying to sign, or the profile at least, Pep Cheverria. We may end up getting a Maxi Araujo, a Lewis Hall, but they're all an attacking wing-back that can go forward, decent defensively as well though, but would allow Morgan Rogers to cut inside into the half space where he thrives. And then the right-hand side would be the wide winger in Giovanni Kenda, and then the support defender in Reece James, maybe Joshua Chempong. But this is where it actually matters. This is the mechanism from the very start of this video. Having a wide winger and an attacking fullback as the width, that is a three-back formation. That's a 3-4-3. Hatto tucks inside to become the back three, and the other fullback bombs forward as a wingback. That's exactly what Xabi Alonso used at Leverkusen with Frimpong as a wingback, basically a winger, and then Grimaldo as the other side as the wingback. And it only works because the other flank is doing the other job. So the 4-2-3-1 on paper becomes a 3-4-3 in possession, and seeing that against Spurs quite clearly shows us what Xabi Alonso should be utilising in his first season at Chelsea. So people thought we were going to be playing a back three. Got a bit confused when it's more of a 4 against Sydney and a 4 on paper against Spurs. But really and truly, I think it will be a 3 building And then out of possession, it was a clear, structured 4-4-2. There was a high press happening with Palmer and João Pedro at the top. You had the wide players as the wingers, and then the two midfielders stepping really, really high onto the Spurs double pivot. It did create gaps, and our wingers had to tuck inside below our double pivot, which created space out wide. And yeah, they did get a few chances from that, but that's all that Xabi Alonso will be focusing on for the rest of pre-season, I'm sure. If after we scored our goal, we will have to sit a bit deeper in a sort of mid-block, Palmer and João Pedro weren't desperate to chase down the centre-backs. And that worked. We didn't concede when we were in the mid-block. Everything I've said so far has been sort of good news and is genuinely exciting under our new coach. But here's the catch that sort of reframes it. When our double pivot, when our midfield is pressing really high, there was a huge gap in midfield, and that's how Spurs scored their winner. They also hit the crossbar just minutes before that, because if they beat our press of our high midfielders, then there was so much space to drive into. Now I'm sort of hoping the fact that Moises Caicedo is coming back for the Juventus game and the rest of pre-season and the coming season, and we're looking to sign a new midfielder, suggests that Xabi Alonso isn't too happy with his midfield options in Lavia, Asugo. And I'm being honest, Enzo Fernandez won't be any better out of possession in the midfield pivot. So it is looking, even after 2 games, it's looking like Asugo could go on loan. Lavia could even potentially go, maybe also go out on loan or just be kept around. But the midfield is what we really need strengthening now, after we've signed our left back option. This is what Alonso said after the Spurs game, post-match. There were moments that we were struggling to find solutions, and we need to have this. The positives is that we correct them. But there were moments that the game management is something that we can learn from today. When they were pressing so high, it was tough to find the solution from inside, to have a different understanding of what's happening, and to make those changes in the game. It's something that will happen often in all these games, and the more situations we have that we are struggling and we find the solutions, the better the team will be. Basically speaking about the game management, finding solutions against the high press from Spurs, building out from the back was a bit of a struggle against Spurs. We weren't creating real clear-cut chances. A lot of our chances we created was just from our good high press and mistakes from Spurs' backline playing out the back. But playing on a poor pitch doesn't help. It's not an excuse, but it doesn't help. So stepping back from the 2 pre-season games and being measured, they're just friendlies. It's a new coach. Even Spurs have had De Zerbi since the end of last season. There was a lot of kids playing as well, so it's not anything to get worried about or running away with either. But the identity is clearly taking shape, and from the Spurs game especially, building with a back 3 is what I was looking out for, and we saw it. It's about finding a free man, which was often Cole Palmer, and the asymmetric flanks, turning the 4 into the 3. And we have a lot of options, a lot of talented players to do these roles. So against Juventus, it'll be interesting to see what happens, and AC Milan as well. And we're getting closer and closer to the start of the Premier League season. Let me know what you think in the comments about this. If you enjoyed this video, I think you'll enjoy this one too. So click here, I'll see you there. Thanks for watching, goodbye.